and gentlemen, welcome to the 2021 Day 5 Connect Conference, brought to you by Huawei and IoT and engine stream partner, Software AG. Enjoy the next session.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this IoT stream today in the Connect conference. It's a really been an excellent week. We've had some really phenomenal conversations, and today is going to be exactly the same. So keeping in the trend of discussing all things tech, by now everybody will know that today is the IoT day, and we're going to be exploring a little bit more on this topic of the Internet of Things. What does it mean, understanding it, unpacking it, and really appreciating what this means in the context of South Africa and the larger Africa. So today I'm really privileged to have with me an industry veteran, Sean Hardman, who's the Director for Technical Services at Macrom Fleet Analytics. So Sean's been in the IT and software industry really seriously since 1987, and he sits at the helm of Macrocom's fleet division. He's incredibly passionate. He's got an insatiable appetite to harness the power of computing to maximize efficiencies in the entrepreneurial space, both financially and operationally, and has culminated in him really fully embracing what we talk about today as the fourth industrial revolution. He spent the last 9 years at the coalface of the fleet industry in South Africa, developing an in-depth understanding of the challenges facing fleet owners and operators. And his relationship with Macrocom, a leading IT industry, was naturally destined to be. In Sean's own words, he says, in his current role at Macrocom, I can honestly state that I'm at the pinnacle of my career. I marvel daily at the fact that I'm honored to be an integral part of a truly progressive and disruptive company that lives, eats, and breathes IoT. It's our DNA. Welcome, Sean, and thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for sharing your insights with us as an industry expert. I have to agree with that statement of yours. I also, feel so privileged that every day I can wake up in a sector that is really just growing. Demand is incredible, and we're very fortunate to just look at how our own sectors are expanding and the opportunities that our sectors are creating. But welcome to you, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to you.
Anita, thank you very much for that intro. I do appreciate it. Good morning to everybody. I am very, very privileged to be at the helm of Macrocom Fleet Analytics, and very, very privileged to sit in this industry, this IoT industry that, let's face it, is in its infancy, and really, really is growing exponentially day by day. And having embraced this, I cast my mind back to when fleet started coming into its own through the likes of telematics devices, which, believe it or not, are actually the forerunner of IoT as we know it today. And we're going back 20 years that the telematics devices came into this space, starting out as a common or garden little GSM modem, and then GSM having facilitated what it does facilitate in terms of data transport. And so we've now gone down this route of now taking the whole fleet industry into the realms of IoT. And, the fleet analytics that I make reference to here, and I'm going to present to you today, is just such a shining example of how we have taken an industry and brought it into the forefront of the fourth industrial revolution, and just what this actually means to fleet managers, fleet owners out there, specifically those whose fleet is not their core industry, but more a necessary evil. They're not going to be able to run the business without it, and they don't necessarily have the expertise to be able to delve into what makes fleet operate the way it does and how do you optimize your fleet. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share a screen with you now, and in there we will take this through. I will put everything through its paces, and we can get to where we are as far as this is concerned. So just as a brief intro to Macrocom as a company, our logo there, Smart Made Simple, is it's exactly what Macrocom is all about. We all know that people can get bogged down in technology. There's obviously a bit of a resistance out there from some people when it comes to technology. And it's a case of embracing something as sophisticated as IoT and just applying it in our everyday lives. We do concentrate heavily on business to business. However, there's so many offerings that we have for the consumer out there as well. But in this instance, when we go through the fleet, it all at this stage is running around business to business. So we're ever mindful of the fact that there's no such thing as a silver bullet in the realms of fleet management. And we pride ourselves in developing and implementing bespoke solutions, utilizing cutting-edge hardware, complemented by purpose-specific in-house engineered software. So we are fortunate enough to be recognized as market leaders in the IoT space, and we're confident of our abilities to meet the exacting standards of our customers. And then when we drill down to specifically our fleet solution, it transcends beyond the standard real-time monitoring of fleet movements and driver behavior to delivering actionable insights essential to achieving fleet management best practices. And, you know, it's all about fully automating data harvesting and analysis. So not only are we collecting data from a remote device, but we're also going down the route of taking that data and analyzing that data to death, specifically to be able to assist the guys with the actionable insights that they require to be able to run their fleet. So just as an exact summary of Macrocom, we're a BEE level 1 company, and we play in the spaces of fleet analytics, logistics and asset management, smart city, utility management, retail and building management solutions, digital healthcare, smart agriculture and farming. And we're proud to have achieved a year-on-year growth of 63% and 48% increase in profitability over the same period. We really do get out there and put our, sort of put everything to good use as far as IoT is concerned. Just a few of our accreditations, obviously BEE level 1, as I mentioned, ISO 9001, ISO 45001. We're also playing in this, we're about to go for our ISO 27000. We should have that in the next 2 months. And NOSA, CIBD, CETA, CHEETA, SACE, and work very closely with CSIR and many of our solutions. Very proud of our achievements. Loud and proud in the middle of that is IST Industry Council. We're a founding member of that. The various awards that we've got, importantly, the IoT Conference Award in 2019, where specifically our fleet management product was placed in the top 3 in terms of IR4 industry awards there. Then we go on to our partner ecosystem. That's just a snapshot of some of the our partners that we partner with in order to be able to deliver the solutions that we deliver. We're very, very proud of our partner ecosystem, and it's through these partnerships that we're able to get out there and deliver the solutions that we do. Some of our private sector customers, these are the just a few of the leading private sector customers. And we also play heavily in the public sector space. So, you know, really driving these Munichs and the various government departments, assisting them in efficiencies and what have you, and we're starting to make a lot of inroads as far as that is concerned. So onto the analytics product itself, the Fleet Analytics, this being the division that I head up, and where we've taken the whole fleet management industry into an environment that quite honestly, when I first mooted this idea, along with one of the role players in Macrocom, Gideon Forster, we really met with some massive resistance, with those supposedly in the know saying it's impossible, this cannot be done. So just as a broad overview in terms of the fleet, apart from the analytics, there's obviously the standard stuff that goes with fleets, such as control rooms, incident management, communication solutions, tracking solutions, inspection checklists, a lot of integrating of data into existing systems, and we even delve into the asset monitoring. But we will concentrate on the analytics. So in the terms of the background of analytics, the key components are the trip data for each and every vehicle, and then B, the costing data that sits behind that. So each and every cost that can be attributed to a vehicle. So in terms of the trip data, obviously, we, as I mentioned before, we're using telematics devices to gather that data. Now, a key factor, and this is where we stand head and shoulders clear of the entire industry, is that we are actually telematics unit agnostic. Now, so it doesn't matter whose telematics unit is in there. It is within that vehicle. By and large, we can harvest the data from that particular installed device. So it effectively means that in implementing this entire solution that we have, we don't have to touch a vehicle if it already has some kind of telematics in it, which in this country, in the fleet space, covers 99% of the vehicles out there. So it can either be an OBD tracking device or a deep install device. We do that 1% that we encounter every now and again where somebody doesn't actually have a tracking device. We will supply our own, either one of the two, OBD or deep install. That would come along with the standard fleet management user interface or platform. We then bolt on top of that our analytics platform and offer optional stolen vehicle recovery. So we're harvesting all that trip data via these telematics, which have been around for over 20 years, have really stepped into the space of IoT insofar as the granularity of data is unbelievable. We can bring it right down to getting data every 5 seconds off these units. We use GSM as a data transport mechanism. And in the stolen vehicle recovery space, we have a backup unit that we use Sigfox as the data transport mechanism, largely because the Sigfox signal is incredibly difficult to jam. It's just cannot be done by the crooks and thieves out there that would like to jam that signal in order to steal a vehicle. It's just too expensive, whereas jamming a GSM signal is a $250 purchase of a device that plugs into the cigarette lighter socket. So, but that's another discussion for another day, the whole stolen vehicle recovery side of things. So in terms of our very own telematics devices, there are a number of areas that we monitor, and while I've got all those bullet points up there, I'm not going to delve too much into those. It's purely to indicate just how much data we can get off these IoT devices that sit out there, And they truly make use of edge computing. They will sit and they will process a huge amount of data on the device itself before sending us that data, because the unprocessed data would just take too long to be able to have to transport it to a server, process it, get it back down to the unit. It just makes sense that there's a significant edge computing component to these telematics devices. So going into granularity of data, well, we can range anything from, the default is 10 seconds, but we can take it from 1 second out to it's user configurable. But not only that, the detail that comes through from it. So now we've got a nice unit in there. We're getting things like absolute fuel rail temperature, ambient air, barometric pressure, the battery current, so that we don't run foul of batteries running flat on us and what have you. And even commanded exhaust gas reticulation, engine fuel rate, engine coolant temperature, the load, the RPM, fuel levels, what have you. So we're sitting in a situation where we're getting an enormous amount of data. Now you can imagine some poor guy that is sitting there and trying to analyze what is going on, where fleet is not their core business. It's not their core capability. They don't necessarily have the expertise to be able to analyze this veritable plethora of data that is coming in there. So not being in a position where one is fully understanding of what all these parameters are that influence the fleet, and being able to analyze those parameters to the extent of being able to say, yes, we are running at optimum, or no, here is a weakness, here is another weakness, this is how we work on it. You can imagine that the poor person is absolutely overwhelmed. And 9 times out of 10, as important as this whole fleet is, and often, apart from salaries, the single highest expense in a business, you find that the management of the fleet is left to the receptionist. And the poor receptionist is sitting there and trying to make head or tail of these, say, 1,000 different canned reports that they could play with no understanding of what is going on. Or they lump it on the group accountant, and the group accountant is sitting there with such a workload in themselves that this just takes a back seat. So, along comes Macrocom Fleet Analytics to the rescue. And we present the client with a very, very straightforward dashboard that reveals specific insights that the dashboard makes it look so simple, but behind the scenes, believe me, there is this frenetic activity, fortunately fully automated, because we love the fact that computers don't sleep, they don't take leave, they never get ill, and they just churn away, and they can process this type of data at a speed that a human wishes they could get to. Just as an example, the type of analysis that we do on the data, we're looking at 5 man hours per vehicle per day. Now you start talking about a fleet of 400 vehicles, all of a sudden you're looking at a division of people to be able to reveal the type of insights that we reveal. And these guys log into this dashboard on a daily basis. When they log in, the default date range over there is yesterday's data. So the first thing that they presented with is, this is the total running cost of your fleet. Now, this is a live data set of a fleet of about 400 vehicles. And so they know that over the period under analysis, which in this case is the 1st of the month until yesterday, that their total running cost is 805,415 Rand and 91 cents. So how do we arrive at this running cost? Well, what we're doing is we're taking the telematics, as I mentioned before, to gather all the trip data. And then over and above that, we're also gathering all the data that is pertinent to the costing, all the cost data, let's put it that way, the cost data pertinent to this fleet. So any cost that can be attributable to the fleet, which we break down into two categories, being fixed costs and variable costs. So the variable costs would be the costs that change when the key is turned and that engine fires up. So that would be your fuel, your services, your tires, repairs, maintenance, that sort of thing. They're all considered to be variable costs. And then your fixed costs would be the repayment of the vehicle, if a repayment on the vehicle is applicable. It may be that they paid cash and then we have to take depreciation into consideration. It would be the insurance on that vehicle, what the annual licensing fees are. And in some instances, and it's entirely up to the client, we would even take into consideration drivers' salaries, but that being a client preference. So now what we're doing is we're taking fixed costs and we're reducing them to a per minute cost, and we take the running costs as they come in, which all this data, eventually once we've got everything going and our data collection mechanisms are fully automated. So we're dealing in two spaces here. Data convergence being the first of those spaces, and taking data from multiple sources, and eclectic sources at that. It differs wildly as to how that data comes in. It might be fleet card data. The fleet card could just be fuel and tolls, but it could also be fuel, tolls, maintenance, and any other expense, tires, or what have you, that are applicable to that vehicle. So we now have to get this data in. We have to normalize the data so that our own database will recognize it. Our own processes will recognize that data. And we then start going about the analytics. So the first part of the analytics is the number crunching, and that is to arrive at this daily cost. But you will see later that we actually break this daily cost down to a cost per kilometer. So in the case of the guys who are out there and they want to invoice in terms of the distance covered between base and the client and back, they've got a cost per kilometer that they can apply should they wish to use that in an invoicing module, for argument's sake. So the client is able to then choose whatever period they would like to analyze in terms of what the dashboard is going to spit out to them, whether that be a snapshot of a day in the past, or whether that be the last 6 months, the last month, the last week, or yesterday. It is all entirely up to the client. From a functionality point of view, we allow them to select a group. In this case, these might be branches, they might be provinces. It all depends on the client themselves. Like I said before, there's no silver bullet. This is our vanilla dashboard. Each and every client has their own specific set of requirements, which we cater to, and we'll even go as far as customizing the dashboard past the vanilla dashboard that I'm presenting here. And so those groupings there, they could choose branches, divisions, whatever it is. We will break it down into that. And then it allows them a drill down to the actual vehicles within the group, down to a single vehicle, should I say. So that just from a functionality point of view. And obviously the landing screen, as we see it here, we are analyzing the entire fleet. And so now you're looking at we've given them what the total running cost is. So we've also given them total distance traveled over the period under analysis. Total number of hours based on every single vehicle in the fleet. And then we come to some of the nice clever bits. So over here, we're reporting on a speeding duration and cost, and we're talking about an excess idle duration and a cost attributable to those particular events. So in essence, what we're doing is we are calculating the cost of less than optimal driver behavior. Now, in a fleet environment, we all know that, a company vehicle is a fantastic vehicle. It is a 4x4, it's amphibious. You could smoke those tires whenever you feel that way inclined, as long as you're not too close to the office. It's just the way drivers tend to drive these vehicles. So we monitor a very, very important component here, and that is how are these drivers driving this vehicle. And over here, we're reporting on the star performers and what their score is. So we have developed an algorithm that we use for calculating the driver's score. And so there we report, in this case, the top 10 drivers all on 100%. And then we will report the worst. And in this particular instance, their very worst driver is sitting at 93%, which is also considered to be a good score. And we guide our clients as to what is good score, what is bad score, why is it a good score, and what have you. But the impact of that, their worst driver is sitting at 93.88%. So we now look at the speeding cost. So of the 7,529 hours and 59 minutes on the road, 4 hours and 30 minutes of that was spent speeding at a cost of 254 Rand and 94 cents. Now, while it's a very complex calculation, it uses a basic premise of if you're driving 80 when you should be driving 60, you're using more fuel, you're hammering the tires unnecessarily, you're basically hammering the vehicle, there's more wear and tear on the vehicle. The single biggest component of this additional cost is undoubtedly, in the case of speeding, the fuel. And fuel being such an expensive commodity now, it's critical to be able to monitor that accurately. Now, there's a speeding cost of 254 Rand and 94 cents over this period of 10 days, which is irrecoupable. The horse is bolted, that money's gone. However, controlling this driver behavior here reduces this cost. Now, when these clients joined us 3.5 years ago, over a month, if I extend those, if I extrapolate from these figures here, they're going to be looking at roughly 1,000 Rand over a 1 month period of analysis. In fact, what we can do is we can take this back to a 1 month period, and let's take it from the 11th of September through to the 10th of October and give us a full 1 month in terms of running costs. And this cost that has come up here is now, as I mentioned earlier, this is money that is now gone and cannot be recouped. And however, the controlling of that behavior is something that is facilitated through being able to monitor this driver behavior. So extrapolating these figures, I'll get back to about 1,000 Rand. There we go, 886 Rand. And so that 886 Rand over that period from the 11th of September to the 10th of October, that's 1 month's worth of speeding costs. Now, when this client joined us 3.5 years ago, that figure was sitting between 12 and 15,000 Rand a month. Their worst drivers were coming in below 75%. Now, controlling that particular environment, they have managed to change this from a 12 to 15,000 Rand a month cost down to around 1,000 Rand a month. So immediately, just by going and monetizing what the impact of less than optimal driver behavior has, all of a sudden it becomes important to control this particular environment. Go and train these drivers. So there we can see that, a significant cost savings just through monetizing what the cost of less than optimal driver behavior is, in this case, speeding. Similarly, where they are spending 453 Rand over this period of analysis through excess idle, that is fuel that is burnt unnecessarily. That was sitting at around the 2,000 to 2,500 Rand mark when they joined us 3.5 years ago. And that has now been reduced significantly through monitoring, through the ability to monitor this particular aspect. So this is where the clever stuff comes in terms of data analysis and being able to extract meaningful data and give the clients meaningful insights, actionable insights, where they can go in, they can take corrective action and physically reduce the cost of running their fleet. So we also go down the route of monitoring what we call high-risk trips. Now, this is more a health and safety type concern. We also monitor high-risk trips, where this is more of a health and safety concern. A risk trip being a trip that is longer than 2 hours behind the wheel without taking a break. So in essence, a measure of fatigue control. But the fact that we monitor this has really caught favor with the insurance industry, because we all know that, in the past, or maybe we don't all know, but 10 years ago, the single biggest losses incurred by insurance companies were vehicle theft. That's no longer the case. It's now accidents, and a very, very high proportion of accidents come about because of driver fatigue. So here we're giving the fleet managers the ability to be able to drive, to monitor that, the number of trips where their drivers are not taking the prerequisite 15-minute break after driving 2 hours continuously. And also that's just, a little insight is there. Reduce the risk. You don't want the guys in accidents. It's going to cost you money. That vehicle's going to be off the road. And not only that, you're going to be paying excesses and perhaps even marginalizing the premiums that you're paying. Now, this last area that we monitor here is after hours distance and cost, is how we politely label it, because in a lot of instances, this is unauthorized usage. For argument's sake, the fleet owners will allow the drivers to take their vehicles home because they don't want to mess with public transport. Can't have a driver not arriving at work. So they'll say to the guys, listen, take the vehicles home, but you may not use them after hours. In the long haul game, that doesn't apply. They run 24/7. But in 80% of the fleets out there, that is the case. And that excessive or unauthorized usage becomes a very, very real problem in their lives. Now, we're looking at these guys looking at around 140,000 in a 1 month period. Obviously, there is a certain amount of authorized usage after hours, but these guys were sitting up at the 240,000 a month mark, between 240 and 270 a month. that they literally were throwing away through unauthorized usage. And they were saying, oh, it's a little bit tough to monitor this. And, you know, it's confrontational. And we know the guys sneak out to the shops and this and that and the other thing, until they saw the amount of money that they were throwing away. So in a nutshell, just with this particular data set here and this particular client's data, and I must add that this client, they actually had received awards from the fleet management industry to say that they were applying best practices. They managed, through the use of this particular system, to be able to reduce the running cost of their fleet by a further 20%. It was about 20.8% reduction in the running cost of their fleet. Take that against a total running cost of 2.5 million. That's not a small amount of money to be looking at. So just quickly glancing through the rest of this here, obviously these are just analog representations of the key factors that we measure in optimizing a person's fleet: speeding, acceleration, braking, cornering, and after hours, and then we're giving the total score there. Then here we're giving them the scores per category, the best and worst scores for the best and worst scores for each of those categories for the period under assessment. So if I was to go back to one day's analysis, this is based on yesterday's data. Total running cost was 24,000. The best was 100%. For speeding, the worst was 75%. Acceleration, 100 and 100. So we're going right down, and they see there after hours, hold on, 56%. That's nearly half of this vehicle's trips for yesterday were after hours. It may or may not be authorized. They will go and analyze that specific vehicle by going in there and looking at FH99 and be able to go and select that particular vehicle, FH95 rather, going to select that specific vehicle and analyze what went on there, and that from there they can drill down and work out whether that was actually authorized or not. So they can then go in and analyze specifically FH95 GLGP to go and see what that vehicle looked like. Now, each and every one of these reveals a drill down. I'm going to click on the distance traveled, and what it does is it shows the entire fleet, and just a mouse over will give what that vehicle traveled over the period under analysis. But more to the point is the underlying data, and this is the underlying data that gives rise to all the insights that we deliver. So within this data, obviously, apart from identifying the vehicle, we're giving them the distance traveled, the average cost per kilometer for that particular distance traveled. Now, most of these vehicles in this fleet are Nissan NP200s. All of a sudden, we see over there that that's an NP300. This is data that they know. They know their vehicles. We've got to know them as a result of the having dealt with their data as often as we have. But now it's showing there the distance traveled, what the average CPK is, what the actual cost is incurred by that vehicle for that period under analysis, which happens to be yesterday. Their duration on the road, their speeding duration, speeding cost. Any one of these you can order by. So if I wanted to filter, there's the most expensive speeding cost of the day. They could then go and further delve into what was going on with this particular vehicle and why did he incur that kind of cost as far as speeding is concerned. Excess idle, risk trips, and then after hours cost and duration. So somebody's in a bit of trouble over there at a 2,244 Rand cost after hours. the after hours distance that they've traveled, and then we give them the breakdown of their liters per 100 kilometers used on there, because obviously in this instance, we're getting all their data. We happen to be getting their fuel card data as well. So we're calculating their average liters per 100 kilometers. And in a lot of instances, we're also getting that directly off the ECU of the engine through the telematics unit when we're using the more sophisticated telematics units. This particular client has asked us to put the year models of the vehicles in there, and they use that for benchmarking. So they will say, oh, this 2009 vehicle that we're using, we need to go and replace that because its CPK is sitting up in the R2.15 bracket, where its 2019 equivalent or 2020 equivalent is sitting at R1.79. Time to replace this vehicle because it's now costing too much to run it. So that in a nutshell is what our fleet analytics system is about. And over here on the fleet card data, now I'm only analyzing yesterday's data. On the fleet card data, it's saying we don't have any fleet card data. Well, that is because fleet cards are run on the old magstrip system, and it takes 3 days before we get fleet card data. So all I have to do is just back the date up a little bit, submit, and fleet card data will start pulling through there. So they can see, okay, over that period under analysis, we spent 67 grand on fuel and we bought 3,745 liters, and we've also spent 2,625 on tolls. So as you can see, what we're doing here is we're taking let's call them your top road freight logistics guys, who this is their core business. This is absolutely their core business. And they will sit with a team of 30 people who will sit and analyze data to death in order to come out with the insights that we come out with. It's their lifeblood. It's what they do. Now you've got a company that has a fleet of vehicles that is not their core competency. They may be pharmaceuticals, they may be motor spare distribution, they may be anything other than road freight logistics. They are now in a position to do what these guys do, or rather rely on us to do what road freight logistics companies do on a day-by-day basis, far more efficiently, far more accurately, far more reliably, because everything revolves around fully automating the process. And while there's a little bit of a setup process for a week or so while we get data normalized and we finalize data collection methodology and what have you, because it varies from client to client. And then all of a sudden we're sitting in a situation where this churns away in the background and gives exactly what needs to happen for them on a daily basis to give them these insights to be able to truly optimize their fleet. So in closing, it's just what I'd like to point out here is that we've taken an entire industry, and we've brought them into the realms of the fourth industrial revolution. We're sitting here with software as a service that behind the scenes, there's so much, there's this massive complexity, and presented to the client in a very, very easy to read format, revealing specifically the insights that they need to see, pointing out weaknesses, monitoring strengths, and a daily glance at their dashboard then puts them in a position where they are in so much more control. Let's put it that way. reducing costs and what have you. And whether it be a fleet of 1,000 vehicles or whether it be a fleet of 5 vehicles is of no consequence. A fleet is a fleet. It's basically a vehicle that is being driven by somebody other than the owner of that vehicle. It is a fleet that is being driven by somebody who doesn't necessarily have the same respect for that vehicle as the owner of the vehicle may have. And it's being able to control where the problems lie with that, and if effectively reducing what the cost of less than optimal driver behavior is to rands and cents. So that's me. I am more than happy to take questions from anybody who would like to delve further into this.
Thank you, Sean Hardman. A big thank you from all of us at the Digital Council Africa for sharing some of your sector knowledge and expertise with us today. It was really interesting to listen to you, and yeah, thanks for giving up your time to come and share this really interesting topic with us. For everybody else, please stay tuned, click on the next link and join us in our next session. Thanks for staying tuned. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, we trust you enjoyed the session. Thank you to all our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this event to you. Please click on the next link to join the following session.